have new information on why the FAA suddenly closed the airspace over El Paso.
Yeah, there was all kinds of confusion when the order initially shut it down for 10 days, and we've been working all day to sort it out.
The El Paso airport is only 10 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border, and it's right next to Fort Bliss, one of the largest bases in the nation and a big part of the government's security and surveillance plan.
Teresa Woodard's here to help us understand what happened and make sense of these conflicting accounts.
Well, Chris and Cynthia, we do have new information that just came in tonight. The Associated Press and ABC both now have sources that say this was not about the potential testing of a laser to take out drones. They say the Pentagon actually allowed a laser to be used in the El Paso skies earlier this week, and that when the FAA found out the laser had been used, it closed all airspace to make sure that commercial flights were safe. There are still so many questions, though, after this day of confusion.
So the airport's totally closed?
Apparently.
Listen to the disbelief in these voices.
We just got informed about 30 minutes to an hour ago.
So for 10 days, you guys are not open.
Now, look at what caused it. Here's the FAA notice. Converted to local time in El Paso. At 8:30 Tuesday night, the FAA said the airspace would totally close for 10 days, starting at 11:30 p.m. Chong Kim had a morning flight out.
That's when I saw officers. They're like, and I was like, oh my gosh.
She lives in El Paso now, used to live in Dallas. She followed airport officers' orders, turned around and drove home, only to have that 10-day shutdown end in hours.
Right when I pulled up in my driveway, it says, on time.
Do you feel like as a passenger, you have any sort of clarity about why you went through what you went through?
I don't.
I believe the FAA owes the community and the country an explanation.
El Paso is Texas's 6th largest city, and its leaders do not understand how their airspace was closed with no coordination.
That failure to communicate is unacceptable.
That is not the way that the federal government should operate.
Teresa, given all that, did the FAA offer any explanation of its own?
So the FAA did. Let's go ahead and show a social media post from the Transportation Secretary. He said they took swift action because of a cartel drone incursion and said the threat had been neutralized. But Congresswoman Escobar points out drones are spotted in the El Paso skies frequently. In fact, a DHS official testified to Congress that in a 6-month period, 27,000 of them had been detected. Escobar also said if there had been an immediate threat, like that social media post kind of says what there was, that the airspace would have been immediately closed, and clearly it wasn't.
This was short-lived, but obviously there were consequences.
There were consequences, yeah. The mayor of El Paso said medical evaluation flights had to be diverted. Also, of course, any sort of emergency air operations like a police helicopter, that had to be grounded. Flights were canceled, some were delayed, and a city councilman in El Paso said if this shutdown would have actually lasted for 10 days, the city could have lost up to $50 million.
Wow. It's just incredible.
I know.
It goes without saying this kind of closure is incredibly rare. Authorities haven't closed U.S. airspace for security reasons since 9/11. Now, the FAA once closed the airspace over New Orleans, but that was due to extensive physical damage from Hurricane Katrina. And tonight we've learned Texas Senator Ted Cruz is requesting a briefing from the FAA.